Welcome to the Preservation Pug Healing Guide Season 3. My name is BwbBsJu, and this video is very much geared for Mythic Plus and towards the player solo pugging through Mythic Plus. Now, if you play with a few friends or in a full group, there's lots of good information here, but I've done thousands of runs as a solo healer, and this sort of comes from that background. So if you're looking at my talent choices, I will explain a bunch of them, but we're going through the talents to kind of talk about the flow of the spec and how you really play it in a pug setting. Now, the most important piece of advice will be the first one. So real quick, hit the sub button if you like healing content. It'd mean the world to me. And let's dive right into it. So setting yourself up for reaction times is very important on any healer, but no healer has more setup than Preservation Evoker. Luckily, we have Temporal Anomaly and Resonating Sphere. I've talked about these talents a ton of times, and we need to talk about the reaction time side of it, but just in case you've missed it, it was rebuffed back to 5 targets like Season 1 and Season 2. So Temporal Anomaly will deliver an echo to everyone in your party now. I still recommend that you echo yourself for the use case of your mastery and echoing a target that maybe stands too far away from you. But overall, Temporal Anomaly is our big setup tool. Now, reaction times. It really is echo and how long it lasts. Echo lasts 19 seconds. This is an incredible amount of time in World of Warcraft, and let's say it's the start of a pull, you've echoed yourself, you echoed the hunter, let's say, and then you hit hover and you TA through your party as you move up to the pull. The tank starts pulling, and this takes a couple of seconds, not only for them to establish threat and grab all the mobs, but also all the mobs are going to be targeting just the tank for a moment, and they can usually handle themselves right now, so you're not going to want to cash out. And if you did, you can always hit time dilation and not burn your combo. Then once everyone's gathered, the spells will start getting slung towards anyone in range or anyone in combat. Now the damage might come through. If you pressed your Dream Breath early, Dream Breath lasts 16 seconds at level 1. You don't want to lose 4 or 5 seconds of that for absolutely no healing. So once some damage comes through, you can tap fire that, full charge the Spirit Bloom if it's a heavy amount of damage, you know the vibes. But there's other ways to cash out your Temporal Anomaly if there's only lightweight healing needed. If you're a Grace Period enjoyer, make sure to cash out with Reversion to get your 10% healing bonus on all of your players. Or, my favorite, use Living Flame to farm Essence Burst. Living Flame's a much better heal than you might remember from Season 1. It has been buffed multiple times. However, I'll get into that in a moment. Essence Burst farming is really effective, and this isn't just an opener thing. Keep throwing Temporal Anomalies to get more Essence Burst, or to get more healing down, or to use another cooldown. It might cost a lot of mana, but this is honestly the easiest way to keep a flow of healing going at any portion in a run, and your Temporal Anomaly usage will go down as you get better, but realistically, if you manage your mana correctly, you can just keep whipping this move left and right and utilizing those echoes as often as you'd like. Now, what about that mana usage? Well, I recommend you grab Natural Convergence in the Evoker tree and Energy Loop, my favorite talent for damage on Preservation side. Energy Loop makes Disintegrate deal 20% more damage, the class tree talent will make it channel 20% faster, and it now generates 7,200 mana over its duration. This is a pretty big deal because Disintegrate doesn't cost anything but Essence. So that means your automatic mana regeneration and the 7,200 combined together. If you've never seen it before, if I Temporal Anomaly here in the training and then immediately Disintegrate, you'll notice I got almost all of my mana back. And it only took a few seconds for it to go all the way back to full. This is pretty important because one Disintegrate can kind of remove the effect of that Temporal Anomaly and really reduce how much mana you've used overall. Now, what if you're farming Essence Burst, or you're throwing lots of Leaping Flames, or your tier set's giving you Essence Burst, or whatever Living Flame shenanigans are going on? Let's say you have 1 Essence Burst. Well, now you're mana positive. Let's say you have 2 Essence Bursts. Well, now you've done a truckload of damage and are excessively mana positive, and the echo is still rolling on your teammates. This is at the core of Preservation, the most effective method of healing. Bowser the Editor here, I just want to put into perspective that I did this 5-minute clip where I'm using Dream Breaths, TAs, and Fire Breaths, and Living Flames, all to just get Essence Burst and regenerate my mana. And while it did take 5 minutes, while using all of this mana, I was able to restore all the way up back to full. So I just wanted to give some perspective as to just how good this talent was. Those Dormu's teaching lovers and people who don't run TA, there are other ways to play, but usually they're in coordinated groups. In completely uncoordinated groups, there is no more efficient way to get your healing down and establish a flow and have even an emergency tool and throwing another temporal anomaly, or having it at the end of a stasis to continue comboing. Now, I do want to briefly go over Living Flame. It was buffed multiple times through season 1 and 2, and even in season 3, where now it's a pretty decent heal. And without the talent Life Force Mender, it's producing about an 80k heal on myself. With Life Force Mender, you'll notice that I get somewhere around the 120 to 135k range. Depends on if I have my all my buffs up or not. Right now I'm missing my food, my versatility, my critical buffs, etc. So that's a pretty chunky heal. I like Life Force Mender for its extra damage and healing, and I find I get a lot of value out of this. You can remove these points to use them somewhere else, but I just think when you're pugging, Living Flame being a good heal means that you can rely on using it and Echoes and Temporal Anomaly to heal people when you're not necessarily ready to send something such as a Dream Breath or a Spirit Bloom, which are much longer cooldowns. Now, before I get talking about part of the tree you've probably seen and going, Bowser, why aren't you running those? I do want to talk about Rescue really quick because it's pretty important for everything we're about to talk about. Twin Guardians below it is 100% worth the talent point in higher level keys, or if you know you have a friend who's a bit squishy and you want to make sure you can protect them. So go and grab this. Remember that your Instinctive Arcana talent, while it's great, 4% extra damage is awesome, you can remove this and still do good damage and good healing. So try not to overthink it. Now, Rescue. Do you use this to save people's lives? No. You use this to reposition players. I'm not kidding. When you're pugging, you will occasionally be like, oh, I can save that person's life with a rescue. Neat. But most of the time you're going, wow, that boomkin's on the other side of the arena. You hover over to them, you grab them with rescue and put them where they need to be. 9 times out of 10, players respond well to this and they understand why you move them. Or they ask you, why did you move me? It doesn't break channels. So if a player's casting, it won't interrupt their spell cast. And furthermore, usually pinging an arrow on yourself, if there's, for instance, a language barrier, is all you need to do to indicate that you're trying to get someone to stand near you or in front of you. Hey, rescue. Just keep rescuing them. They'll get the picture. Honestly, I know it sounds like kind of rude, but please do it. Make people move to where you need them, because you heal better when you can actually position your spells correctly. Okay, so let's address some weird talent choices that I made to understand why my left side looks the way it does, because this is very intentional and I want to go through it. Lifebind. This is still a good talent, don't get it twisted. Lifebind means when you Verdant Embrace, you get to share 40% of your healing on yourself. This means when you hit Emerald Communion, the Lifebinded target will receive 40% of the healing you're doing to yourself, and then any spillover healing that Emerald Communion does on its own. It's very efficient, and in season 1, a temporal anomaly into a Lifebind setup that was huge was such a gargantuan amount of healing. I think it was actually the most powerful healing combo in the game. Like, for a 3-minute cooldown, it was absolutely disgusting. That being said, well, maybe other than Rewind, that being said, it got nerfed. The ones through temporal anomaly are weaker now, and it's still a good heal. It's still a great emergency heal, but I found with a Dream Breath running and a defensive on myself to keep my health bar up and popping something like Emerald Communion, it does really good healing even without it. It's a great spell to catch up when you're behind and you need to quickly get those health bars back up for another mechanic. And when you run Rush of Vitality, remember that your maximum health going up increases how much Emerald Communion is producing. So I found that I didn't really need to run Lifebind anymore if I didn't want to. If you're very comfortable with this, that being said, still run it. And in Raid, there are some massive setups for Lifebind that are still 100% worth it. However, Lifebind, I don't find it as necessary as I used to. So that means I can't run Font of Magic. And this was the one that I was a little more worried about, but I'm here to tell you, you can run without this. Now, if you want to run with Font of Magic, that's fine. Your Flame Breath level 4s will produce 1 more Leaping Flame. You'll get a little more upfront damage, which is really nice. And your Spirit Bloom will hit 4 targets, and your Dream Breath in an emergency can be charged up to level 4. However, I don't ever need the level 4 Dream Breath. Level 3 is fine if I need an emergency heal. Spirit Bloom hitting 3 targets was the biggest one, though, because I can skip on a Living Flame leap on Leaping Flames. Now, Spirit Bloom works off of smart targeting, so it'll target 3 targets and always targets the person that you are mousing over. So if you want to mouse over a target with an Echo for a gargantuan heal, you can. However, let's say you have a bunch of Echoes down and you just blind fire a Spirit Bloom, or you target somebody without an Echo, it'll try to heal as many people as potently as possible. Is it perfect? No. I don't even think it follows that logic perfectly. I might have it slightly wrong. that being said, it still does its job in AoE healing, and I have no complaints. A full charge Spirit Bloom is, generally speaking, always doing work, and with our current tier set, you have extra echoes out all the time. So this tends to work out for me with zero problems. So let's talk about one of my favorite talents, Life Giver's Flame. Your Flame Breath turns into a heal. This is important to get down to Life Force Mender, but your Fire Breath healing 5 nearby injured allies for 70% of the damage done, up to 5 targets, split evenly among them. Yeah, this is a big heal, and one target you're not going to notice it. It's weak. You might see the tank's health bar move a little bit if they're the only one taking damage. You will notice it on the last boss of Everplume during that damage buff, by the way. It actually is insane. But in 2 targets, it's pretty noticeable. And in 3, 4, and 5 targets, the Flame Breath healing is out of control good. Like, heal the full party. It's incredible. I really like having this talent because there are times I've held my Flame Breath to help cover like a gap in my cooldowns to heal everyone up, give me a big leaping flame, and I can use that to kind of extend my combos. But it also doesn't break a combo to heal people with Flame Breath. So if you Fire Breath the group, all of your echoes stay ticking the way they normally do, and you can still cash them out with other moves. This is a 10 out of 10 talent, even if you don't run Life Force Mender, which I still recommend highly. This on its own right is just fantastic. So keep Life Giver's Flame around. Now, the whole reason I made the choices I did and having extra heals with Flame Breath and, you know, getting rid of Lifebind and Font of Magic was so that I could run Call of Ysera and Renewing Breath. The biggest problem with this discussion is a lot of the times we go, oh, should you run Call of Ysera or should you run Renewing Breath? And the difference is a 10% potency change, but this is always alive, and this requires you to use Verdant Embrace. As a Pug player, Verdant Embrace is sometimes a heal I'm sending to single target heal someone because a mistake was made. So it's very hard for me to always be committing my Verdant Embrace for a good Dream Breath. However, with this build, if you want to fire a lazy Dream Breath, you can. If you want to power it up and not echo it, you can. If you want to send the full temporal anomaly treatment and echoing a couple people manually for some more potent echoes and then land the fattest Dream Breath the world has ever seen, you should. It's great. This is very flexible. It's very, very viable. And I love the way it feels because it's no compromises. I'm living my best life. Again, you run Rush of Vitality. By the way, don't take Dreamwalker PvP talent over here. You don't need it. You can just press hover and hit Emerald Communion. You're welcome. This really does power up Emerald Communion so much. And you stay thicker for 15 seconds. That means more mastery. That's good. Even though we don't stat for mastery very often, that's a lot of extra healing. So we take those. Now, one talent here I recommend much more than Power Nexus and Spark of Insight is Ouroboros. Ouroboros means every echo you use will power up your Emerald Blossoms by 30%. Now, what's really interesting about this talent, if you've never seen it, is not only does it make the Emerald Blossoms really heavy hitting, this stack never goes away. So by naturally playing the game, you're building up this super powerful Emerald Blossom that can hit super hard. And all the way up to 150%, you can get some incredible heals out of this. So I highly recommend you run this talent, as you'll get value out of it for pressing Echo once or twice, throwing a temporal anomaly, which doesn't apply to the stacks, but will replicate more healing. And all of a sudden, Emerald Blossom goes from an okay heal that, you know, if you chuck like 3 of them during a double essence burst, you get like a decent amount of healing. No, you get an incredible amount of healing now. The first one will be extra chunky, and if you have a little bit of essence in the bank, you can power up another one on the way out too. It's incredible. I really, really like this talent, and Ouroboros gives me a lot of extra mileage, although I don't have a ton of footage of it because it's hard for me to figure out where I panic healed with an Ouroboros, and I usually mark them down, but trust me, it saved my butt many a times in dungeons. So there are some other really good talents for pugging, and there's some good choice talents. You can still run Lifebind and Font of Magic if that's your preference, and also moves such as Time of Need, healing alongside you. It doesn't seem very powerful, but this is great when you're carrying friends. Double Rewind and the 3-minute rewind are good if you know you need multiple rewinds in a row and you have a long period where you don't need those rewinds. This can be really nice, and the 3-minute is usually useful if you know you need to send a rewind often enough that you'll get the value from 1 or 2 more rewinds a dungeon. However, there are a lot of talents here that can be a bit of a bait. I love Exhilarating Burst, and you can run this, but you need to have a very high crit chance for this to really work out. I have a video called The Green Build where I ran Dream Flight, and honestly it was super fun, but I never prefer that over Stasis. Stasis is a little more versatile. Cycle of Life and the Blossom build can work in M+, and you'll even see some top players running it in certain keys on certain weeks, but I can't recommend that in a pug group because the amount of coordination it requires is quite high, and the flexibility and damage of the build that I'm running is a bit more useful if you're not going to be running something that's so potent in healing in a small area. So make sure you're realizing, what does the talent bring to the table? Will I get use out of this? And remember, you can always check in, say, details for your auras to see if it got a lot of uses or if it was up a lot of the time, etc., etc. Now, the final talent to talk about is stasis, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I go over it in my comboing video quite a bit, but stasis, try not to overthink this. There's maybe 1 or 2 places in a dungeon I've ever considered, oh, I want to hold a stasis for that. I use stasis on cooldown to hold a bunch of my coolies and then use that in its 30-second window that you get to hold it to, say, heal another mechanic and let my other cooldowns relax. It just makes the dungeon less stressful. And because it's up every minute and a half, you actually get to use this very often. And oftentimes you'll heal through a heavy mechanic on a boss fight, and then there might be another mechanic 20 to 30 seconds afterwards that you can send the next stasis on. My rule is always have 2 big spells in here. The 3 spells being Temporal Anomaly, Spirit Bloom, and Dream Breath. Try to make sure some combination of those spells is in there, and all you need is 2 of them and you're good. And if you end it with a Temporal Anomaly, remember that you can sort of burn your combo, and then there's already stasis out on everyone. I can use that to extend your combo game. It's very useful, it's very cool, and again, I have a whole video about comboing on preservation that still holds up in season 3, so I highly recommend you go check that one out. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, either stop by stream and ask me, or head down to the comment section. We're more than willing to answer questions. Take care, everyone.